we almost had this like, it was like an informal part of our onboarding process of like decorporatizing people. I would often, even when I was no longer managing team members, like I would sit down and be like, okay, we're going to go write a marketing email to a candidate or a client. Let's go do this. And I'd be like, no, this is just jargon. Like I want to hear your voice. And we would keep doing it week after week after week until people had their voice. Same thing on calls. Like, Ray, you're not showing up as you. Like you need to be you in these situations.
Initiating becoming a hiring machine sequence in 3, 2, 1.
Greg, you had the dream. You're a recruiter. You grew out an agency. You were with AMI Network. You scaled from 275K in 2014 to 4.2 million in gross margin and 1.4 in EBITDA by 2022. You walked away from it. Yeah. That's a recruiter's dream. Like, tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, I think like truly a recruiter's dream in that I didn't start off as the owner. I didn't found the agency, but found myself at one point owning roughly a third of the agency. So it was, it's quite a wild ride to go from, hey, this is a job, I'll chill in for a little bit and leave, to, whoa, I'm building a company that I now own.
Yeah, that's the path. Like, that's what so many people want to do, is just like, you either start your own thing and build it out, which we'll get into in a little bit later with what you're doing now. But that's the other path, is so many people are like, I'm going to put in the work, grind through, like, I want to make something of this experience and show my loyalty and everything else. So let's start with, you were a recruiter there. Like, tell me about like day one when you joined. Like, what were you doing? What were you excited about? What drove you into this? And then we'll get into kind of like how you started moving up in the organization, what led to it, and everything else.
Yeah. So what I was thinking about at that point was I just needed a job to pay my mortgage for the next year while I go work on the side of launching a gym, which was my passion. I came from the fitness industry and management there. And I was just like, I just need something to pay the bills, and kind of fell into this. So at the time it was just, it was a founder, and he had a, successful direct hire healthcare recruitment practice. He had too many searches to handle, hired me as a 180 recruiter. And I came in, and off the bat, we started doing well. And, year one did a little over $250,000, but, year two, 500K, year three, 700K, year four, maybe even before then, we were doing $1 million. And it was a interesting ride to go from like, I don't know, like I'm gonna bounce after not too long to like, okay, maybe there's something here.
Yeah. So you said you did well your first year. That's not common either. Like, we're just breezing past these things that everyone's like we're taking as assumptions here. But like, one, I know there's always that running joke. Like you said, you were doing this thing on the side to pay the mortgage while you wanted to pursue your dream. And everyone's always saying, no one goes to school to become a recruiter, like running joke with all of that. But when you just kind of come in and say, hey, I did well my first year, why do you think that was? Do you think it was the organization where you guys were focusing, some ingrained skills, traits that you possessed? Like, I think there's something in there. I know we didn't plan on hitting into this too much, but sure, I think that's an interesting part to unpack some.
Yeah, recruiting was easy. I wish I could say it was hard. I think, it helped that I spent 7 years going from being a personal trainer, which is a sales job. Like, nobody gifts you clients. Like, you have to go out in the gym floor, you have to make cold calls. And so it was a sales job. So I had already been doing sales to like somewhat wealthy individuals, often business owners. I eventually went from that to managing a team of personal trainers to being a general manager with a $4 million P&L. And so and working at a corporation that felt like an MBA, like they really taught you how to operate a business, which I think helped me to scale AMI also. So, I mean, I already came in with really strong sales skills. I was fearless when it came to outreach. I had been a hiring manager before, so I could relate to a lot of the clients. I just needed to learn healthcare. And I did have a good boss initially who was great at showing me the ropes. We worked in a tiny office, and I'm a fully work from home guy, but man, I got so much benefit of us sitting in a tiny little room and like him hearing my calls and me hearing his calls. And yeah, I mean, I got my first placement my first month, and it was just like steady success after that.
Yeah. That's an interesting set of traits there that you're talking about early on. Is just, you had to learn skills early on. You were fearless in your outreach, and also the types of individuals that you're going after weren't. When you're in personal training, you're not going after people that are going to Planet Fitness for the $10 a month plan, right? Like these are people who are investing. They understand the value that others can bring them. And so I think that's an interesting one too, because there's a different approach that you take with people who understand, like, I recognize your expertise in this thing. I could outsource myself to do it. Like what's the time resource trade-off of doing something like that? So I know we always talk about skills-based hiring and stuff and different angles, but like you seem to be a perfect example of like all these underlying traits and skills and experiences that you learned along the way that just perfectly melded you into being successful when you did start as a recruiter.
Yeah, it's a good point. I actually hadn't really reflected on that, but I mean, literally day one, I come in with my uniform on, and I'm like, great, I'm ready to go work with clients, and my boss is like, okay, here's how you go print out a list of everybody who signed up for gym membership this week. What you're gonna do is just start calling and just say, hey, my name's Greg. How do you feel about using the equipment here? Like, do you want to do a free session? And that's all it was. And then he started to teach me more sophisticated aspects of sales, and it was a somewhat sophisticated sell. It wasn't like, hey, look, do you want a six pack? I have a six pack. Great, you should trust me. It was, I was in Santa Barbara, which is a wealthier part of California, and working with like pretty sophisticated people, and often older people who are like, I don't want you to kick my ass. Like I want you to actually help me fix my body. And so yeah, I got to learn like how to identify somebody's pain points, how to identify the obstacles, like getting somebody really focused on their goal, and then to be able to create a very clear solution for them, and then to show cost value for it, which is exactly how you sell recruitment services, either to a client or to a candidate.
Yeah, that's such a good point. As you're saying pain points, I was like, you want to talk about objection handling, like people in the mall that are trying to sling you some new cell phone and their service, like that's probably one of the, like they get rejected 99.99% of the time. Personal fitness trainers, especially like when you go into a gym, like most people are going there because they just want to go do their own thing, unless it's a small club style gym. So I'm sure there's probably one objection that comes to mind, and I'm not setting you up for this, I'm genuinely curious. I'm sure there's probably like one type of objection that came up pretty frequently when you were a trainer that you've also found as a recruiter when you were getting started. Does anything pop into mind on that front?
It was, I would say there were two that was neck and neck. One was just money, and like, hey, this is a lot of money, I don't want to spend that. And the other was, I'll do it on my own too. Like, I think I can do this on my own without you. And yeah, both were really consistent. And there were times where that was true, but a lot of times where it wasn't.
So how'd you paint that picture for them? I mean, both those examples are absolutely perfect because we come across them as recruiters all the time. But like whether it's the money or I'll do it on my own, how'd you help them? I always say it's like paint the picture of like the opportunity cost, the what happens if you go this route, what's the trade-off, or how did you help them come to the light, so to speak, of why they should partner with you instead?
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to questions, right? Like that's really where sales starts. And I would typically ask them, what are your goals? What do you want to accomplish? Close your eyes, picture a year from now. Like, tell me what you look like. Tell me what you feel like. Tell me what you're able to do. And they would paint that picture for me, and then from there, it's, well, tell me what you've done to get there. Like, what's worked for you, what hasn't worked, why don't you think you're there now? What are the reasons you won't get there? And then, like, I mean, then you have a clear picture, right? And you can say, like, "Hey, look, like, this is what I'm hearing you want to achieve. Is that right? And second, like, these are the obstacles. And then based on that, here's what I believe the solution will be. And here's what that could be like working together." Um, and that's like kind of the sales journey that I've seen, whether you're selling SaaS, whether you're selling personal training, whether you're selling recruitment.
Mm-hmm. So one question I've always liked to ask in that is, how long has this been a goal of yours? Because sometimes you'll hear like, I've been working on this for 5 years, 10 years. And it's like, well, why haven't you hit it yet? Not to like put them on a spot, but you can walk them into that to make them realize like, oh, what I've done is not going to get me there. And that was one of the like, ahas, like, okay, well, I have to change something because obviously this path isn't the right one. Yeah. Well, thanks for going on that little side adventure with me. Always curious on that side. So, okay. started as a recruiter, things went well, came easy, and then as you said, you just gradually progressed going through time. So what you usually see, whether it's sales, recruitment, anything else, it's like you can go the individual contributor route and make a bunch of money for yourself. Like you control your compensation end of the day, or you can say like, I want to be a part of the business and grow the business and make money that way. So before we get into the second part of what set you down the path, well, maybe that is the first question. Like what did send you down the path of choosing like, I want to grow and invest in the company versus I want to see how much money I can make just doing this recruiting thing?
I think there's a couple components to that. Funny enough, like I think a lot of people talk about what they want and having clear vision, and like there were things I wanted. I wanted to earn a certain amount of money, da da da. But so much for me has been dictated by pain and what I don't want, and having a very low tolerance for that. So I think for me, like I started getting the recruitment down, and then I was like, this is kind of boring. Like I don't get a lot of satisfaction from this. I don't think I want to do that. And I started kind of organically selling, and I kind of flipped a call with a candidate into a sales opportunity. I go to my boss and I'm like, hey, can I like send a proposal to this client? And he's like, yeah. And and then like I got that client, and that client got a few placements with them, and I'm like, hey, can I go get more clients? He's like, yeah. Um, and but a lot of that was like me going, yeah, I just if I fast forward several years from now, I think I'm just going to get bored doing this. Like I think I can do it. It just didn't, for whatever reason, it didn't scratch that itch. Um, and then and then like start to fast forward, and I'm like, sales is fun, and I actually still love sales today. But I was like, you know what? I think what would be much more satisfying is to support a team, which was something at my last company. I probably had a team of 50 and several managers, and I found that deeply fulfilling. And I'm like, yeah, I think I want that. And then very quickly it was like, well, what do I need to hire for? How about I hire for the things I don't want to do? So like, let's. I like to sell. I don't want to recruit. I should go like get some recruiters underneath me.
There's so much good stuff in there. It, I was trying to think of the right way to branch into this, but I mean, it's the growth mindset. It's the curse of the growth mindset. I'll sometimes say is like you were very good at that. You could have pursued that for a number of years and found success, but internally you would have been bored. Like you want to, I call it, there's stress, health, positive stress, right? There's like negative stress and then there's positive stress. It's like going to the gym and working out. It's stressful on your body, but it's helping you grow. Same kind of thing here with, it's like, you could do that, but like you want to challenge, you want to push yourself and everything else. So yeah, that's something through a lot of the conversations I've had here with different guests, members of our team at Loxo, as we've recruited, that is a very interesting thing that you'll notice. I don't want to say it's black and white, but you usually see pretty clear camps of people that just like, I just want something that's dependable. I know what's expected of me every day. I can come in, come out, I get my paycheck. I'm happy doing it. It's good enough. Then the people are just like, I'm going to get bored. I need something different. I need to pursue growth because the pursuit is what makes me happy versus having something that might be dependable. Like I'm open to taking a little bit more risk, knowing the upside's there.
Yeah, yeah, and like initially for me, it was like, okay, I need to make sure I can pay my mortgage. Got there within a month. Then I was like, you know what? I just gotten married. My wife at the time didn't work, and I'm like, I want her to be able to have a car because when I'm gone all day, like she's stuck at home. And so like I put up a picture of a car, like within a month or two, got her a car. And then I was like, you know what? Like we've always had a dream of traveling internationally. I want to go to Japan, and like slapped a picture of Japan up in front of my desk. And like as I started checking off those boxes, I was like, this is cool. But then yeah, I went back to like, yeah, and I'm also feeling bored. And I I want more than that. Like I want to find fulfillment within the work too, not just what the work provides for me.
Hmm. Yeah. Vision board. I love that.
Yeah.
Vivian on our team talks about
Yeah.
that all the time, but it's crazy when you do, most of the times it's like, oh, I'd love to make X amount of money. You never put a dollar sign to it. I'd love to travel, but you never say like what specific countries and when you want to do it. It is crazy when, if you just put a goal in front of yourself, all of a sudden you'll have your target and you'll understand what you need to do to get there. But so often we just have these vague, fuzzy goals that's why I'm always wondering like, oh, I don't have enough money. Well, what's enough? I don't know. Well, there's step one.
Yeah.
Answer that question. um, Okay, so you've gone down, now you've grown out the team, you're getting people to do the recruiting while you're doing the business side, and then company keeps growing. And as we touched on the beginning, you became a 33% owner in the company. So what were some of the, like, what was the biggest switch for you when you realized it's not just a matter of recruiting, it's not just a matter of business development for the company, but like, what would you say is probably that big step in jumping up to like company ownership, part company ownership from a 180 or a 360 recruiter?
Yeah, well, I think there were two things that happened. One was I had demonstrated an immense amount of value. Daniel, the previous owner, had spent a couple of years banging his head against the wall. Like he figured out how to recruit well himself. He had tried to hire a couple people before me. He was never able to make it work. I was the missing link where I had actually shown him there's a way to replicate success because I had been successful, and that was the first recruiter besides him. And then I had also developed a couple of other recruiters. I was at the point where I was getting clients, I was managing relationships. And so it really opened up his world to saying, wow, there is actually a way to scale. And for him, he cared more about freedom than just about anything else in the world and didn't want to be tied to this business. He wasn't particularly passionate about it. And so I represented this ticket to freedom for him, which was something that he really wanted. And yeah, I had spent a couple years demonstrating that I could do it. And so at the time, we're about $1 million direct hire business with a couple 180 recruiters, fairly profitable at that point. We ran things pretty lean. And then I go to Daniel and I'm like, hey, I'm starting a gym. And so at this point, I'm in like a managing director type role. And that had still been my passion, and it had been going very slowly for the past, this was probably 2 or 3 years in. It had been going slowly, but I'd gotten a couple of business partners. They were two of the best personal trainers I've ever met, incredible salespeople. Like we created a vision together, and they were going to run the day-to-day operations. I was going to finance the business. I was going to be more of the operations and the strategy guy, and we were going to do this. And I'm like, look, like, this has always been my dream. I'm going to go do this. I'm still going to be here for my day job, 9 to 5. I'm going to be running the agency. But before then, after then, I'm going to be trying to build this gym. And I have to give him a lot of credit. Like he supported that, and he's like, go get it. I really value you and appreciate you. I don't want to hold you back from your goals. Like as long as your work doesn't suffer, like go for this. And that was the case. Like I would wake up at 5 a.m., get to the office by 6, spend a couple hours working on marketing for the gym, etc., and then jump into running the agency. And then I would go to the gym after and, work with the team, work with my business partners. I was probably working 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. And did that for about a year. And, the recruitment firm stayed afloat, and the gym was making a little bit of money, but like these guys were accustomed to killing it, and they were just bleeding cash personally, and they were at each other's throats. Turned out we didn't really do a good job aligning values fully from the get-go. And so one business partner left, then the other business partner and I looked at ourselves and we were like, look, this is more than we're ready to sign up for. And so we made the decision to get out. We actually found somebody who paid us like 50 grand to take over the lease, which was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since COVID was not too far
Yeah.
around the corner. And this gym was like shut down for 2 years after. Like I avoided a huge money pit. And so, this gym closes down after a year. I go back to my boss and I'm like, look, like I want to be in a place where I'm financially free by the time I'm 40, which means either like I've had some sort of exit event or we've built a business that's cash flowing really well that doesn't rely on me. And I'm like, I see two paths. Like option A is rinse and repeat. I'll still continue to work for you. I'll do a great job and I'll start another business of some sort that doesn't compete. And eventually that business is going to be successful and I'm going to leave for that. And we'll shake hands and walk away and it'll have been a good run together. Option B, I see something here with this recruitment firm and I feel like I've demonstrated my worth. If you give me a large enough ownership stake to make this worth my while and for me to truly feel like an owner, I will run this thing for you. I will grow this thing. I will give you the ticket to freedom where you can step out of this. And he's like, I like option B.
I love it. You've never done this before though. That's a hard, not a hard pitch, a good pitch on your behalf to him. There's a steep learning curve in that. So you've now gone from 180 to 360 to owning. Like what What were some of your biggest learnings there? And I'm sure that first like 3 months, 6 months when, so you got the growth mindset, you know that you're not going to have it figured out in day one, but what were some of the things you're just like, oh, like the business needs to fix this, or I need to get this process in place, or we should look to niche down, or, you know, any number of things. But what were some of those big aha moments for you once you got to that level?
Interestingly, like pragmatically, not a lot changed because I was already managing a small team. I was responsible for biz dev, account management, like personnel management. And so, like, functionally, my job didn't change day one. Like, really, what changed for me was mindset, right? Like, now I own this. Now I was building this not just for him and not just for my paycheck, but for me. And so, like, that was probably the biggest shift. And it took a while for that dynamic to change because, like, he also now had to look at me as a business partner instead of an owner. And, like, hey, now there's certain things that like I need to be a part of, not like you just go do this on your own. And like our dynamic, so like that was the hardest shift to actually do is like shifting our dynamic and shifting my relationship to the business. The day to day actually didn't really start to change as much until we started to grow more.
Okay. So let's get into that. As you started to grow more, like what were some of those shifts that you picked up on?
Well, I think one of the things was continuing to just like not be satisfied, like really focus on solving for dissatisfaction. So the biggest unlock for us was we needed to go out and get more clients. And we had been kind of treading water for a couple years, and which was fine. We were profitable, but we weren't really growing. And we just plateaued right around like a million, 1.2 or so. And I the bottleneck was on prospecting. Like I could send out great emails, I could cold call, but I knew that there were hundreds of companies in our very, very broad niche that we could work with. And I was only accessing, 1% of 1% of them. And I'm like, if there was a way that I could just have access to every single company that's hiring in our space who fits our ideal client profile, I know I can get more deals. And I also hate doing this work. Like I don't like doing research. I get so bored doing this. I want to focus on solving bigger, more complex problems. And that actually is what led us to offshore. And so that kind of pushed us to say, let's try working with an agency, or let's try hiring a freelancer, or let's just go all in and hire a full-time employee in another country. And it took a while to sort out, but like that was like the first unlock in our business was hiring some offshore employees to like start to get my time focused on closing deals and managing the team and growing the team, and to like 100x the size of our initial pipeline, which then just put us in a place where we could start to get a lot more clients.
Yeah. That's an interesting one. That's one a lot of people are scared of. And that's also one of the biggest problems. If you go talk to 100 recruiters, 99 of them are going to say that something similar to that when it comes to if their goals are growing the business. So what were some of the tasks or items that you had the offshore help doing for you? I know you said broadly just like filling up that pipeline massively, but as we've recently launched account-based prospecting and everything else, like were they mapping out your ICP specific to say, hey, these are all of the potential clients that you could be working with, the roles, here's where we found openings, here's the contact information, like what, down at a tactical level, like you don't have to list out everything extensively, but like what are like 2 to 3 of the different things that you had them working on that you were immediately just like massive value add, massive value add, massive value add?
So there are two core things. I think the biggest thing is our mindset was, imagine we have unlimited time. What are the things that we would do? And like that was like the mindset shift, because we were paying $5 an hour,
Mm-hmm.
and we essentially could have unlimited time. And so there are really two things. One was going onto Indeed and looking for companies that were hiring in our space, qualifying those companies, qualifying the job opening, finding the decision makers, getting their contact info, dropping them into a drip email campaign, and then putting me in a place where I could do direct cold outreach. And then number two is list building. And we got really creative with that. Like we worked in the healthcare space, and we're like, we want to work with mid-size physician clinics, like places that have a few locations. And like some of these things aren't easily accessible, but we found out you could go onto a health plan's website, like Anthem Blue Cross's website, and like go look for doctors and like use that engineer clinics. You do interesting projects like that. Like go look up all the physician clinics with at least 3 locations and less than 20 in Los Angeles and just like build out lists of these companies and then find the decision makers that we could reach out to them.
Yeah, that's so creative, and it's such a. I love how you're approaching it from a different lens of what others had done there. The healthcare space is notoriously one for just like trying to find the right people to get in touch with. Like 7 out of 10 healthcare providers, professionals don't have a LinkedIn profile, so even identifying these people is a huge task. Let alone getting their contact information. Let alone trying to get their attention when they're working 8, 10, 12-hour shifts, and when they're finally off, it's like, are you able to speak to something that they care enough about? So what did you find was, we don't have to go through the whole playbook, but like what was the most helpful thing that you did on that front? Because it obviously it all starts with the list. You identified the people, you know exactly who to go after. Were you leading with a pain? Were you leading with a benefit? Were you leading with a, hey, let's just talk? Like, how are you getting the conversation started with them?
Yeah, so I think this was back around 2017, 2018 when we still started really going into this. So before I think today's era where emails are less effective or have to be treated differently. So for us, it was really drip email campaigns, and just dropping people into 3 or 4 stage email campaigns. Um, I think what set us apart is we were obsessive. I was obsessive with optimizing these. So like every single week I had time carved out to go rework my emails and to ABCDEFG test, like to go gather data on what's working, what's not working. We did an absurd amount of personalization. Like we would be running 10 different campaigns. Like, oh, for small doctors' offices, it's this campaign. For like hospitals, it's this. And like really, really, really tweaking and fine tuning. One of the things I loved, nothing was off limits. So like, and I came from a corporate environment where I felt so stifled and suffocated. I just want to go try ridiculous stuff. Like part of it's just to like satisfy myself. I don't know if it'll work. And like, I like even once I just remember like emailing somebody and saying, I will call you in 7 minutes, and just like Greg Fischer, nothing there. And then like calling them in 7 minutes and seeing if they would like answer out of intrigue. Right. And just like trying ridiculous stuff. But I think by like setting the boundaries at ridiculous, then other things no longer seemed ridiculous. And like, I actually just put a post out on LinkedIn, but one of the most effective emails that I ever wrote, this would be the 3rd email in the sequence. Like email 1, hey, saw you had this opening. We filled this role for company X, Y, and Z. Here's what we can do for you. Company 2, like a short, quick, witty follow-up. Email number 3, which was by far the biggest moneymaker was after not hearing back for a bit, I'm guessing one of 3 things happened. 1, you're as content as a kitten with a warm cup of milk because you have a phenomenal candidate pipeline. 2, like say, I don't know, during COVID era, like 2, the CFO went a little overboard purchasing toilet paper and you just don't have any pennies in the piggy bank to spend on recruitment. Or 3, you've been burning the midnight oil like most of my clients these days. I caught you at the perfect time and this was the reminder you needed to get back to me. Asterisks. Bonus option, you got in and out of Bitcoin at the right time, and now you're retired on your private island. And this was like tweaked for each type of decision maker, but man, the response rate was just through the roof on that.
Interesting. And there's usually like they were laughing type thing, like hey, that was hilarious, you got me something. I'm assuming most were positive, okay, let's talk type conversations.
Yeah, or just like, this is the best email I've ever seen. It's number 1, but like I just had to respond to it.
Yeah, that's hilarious. And I mean, that goes to show the difference. So everyone thinks there's this perfect playbook you have to follow, like this perfect 30-day sequence, do it in this order. Hey, I have this great job for you, or looking for candidates, whatever it may be. I forget, I was listening to some podcast a while ago, but there was some founder who they were working with a bunch of engineers. And they said, I've got this problem, come back to me with solutions. An engineer comes back with 2 solutions. And the founder goes, great, now come back with 98 more, and then we'll go and pick. Because most people think it's like, it's either or. There's 1 or 2 paths. It's like, no, go exhaust everything. And that's what you said. When you set the bar at just like absurd, you come up with these very creative things. And since you were working on these weekly iteration sprints, you could quickly figure out like what is working for this segment, for this niche, for anything else, to get the responses and drive the results. Since the legwork, the research was already being done for you, you got to do the creative and the execution fun part.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it was so much fun like that. I think I'm a halfway decent writer and I enjoyed writing. And that was like the big unlock we needed. Like if we could optimize these emails and just do email better than anybody, we were already doing top of funnel better than anybody else. If we could do email better than anybody else, we would win.
Okay. So you're having fun, you're having a blast, you're iterating every day. Then you walked away. Why'd you walk away? And you can also tell me how long of the time gap was between having a blast and anything that may have occurred. But on paper, again, you've got the dream here. So what started to happen where you're just like, I don't know about this thing?
Yeah, I think there was it happened over time. I think there were probably two things. So one, we're now maybe 7 years in, give or take a little bit. And, we're now doing a couple $1 million. We have a great team. I'm making good money. And, we're on a path towards building something bigger. And it's also during COVID, so you have way too much time to think and reflect. And I start really taking a look at what we're doing, and it starts to feel incredibly meaningless to me. Um, and just really not satisfying. And I'm not working with the candidates and when I did, it wasn't really meaningful to me. And um, so the impact it has on the candidates and changing their careers isn't super meaningful. We also worked with some like not so good clients and people were constantly turning over to, and we were making money, but I was just like, what are we really doing here? And then for the client side, I didn't have a close personal connection with the client. I'd started handoff client relationships. And so I'm not like, wow, we're working with these amazing companies and like helping them do these really good things in the world. And so I started feeling like really like, man, like, yeah, it's great to go make money and find satisfaction in other places and have a nice house and travel. But like this just, if this is all my life is going to be, like, is it a waste? Um, and so I started to reflect on that and ultimately said, look, like based on my bigger life goals, I need to make this work. I have to find a way to find fulfillment in this. And I redirected to a third area, which was my team. And that was a source of immense fulfillment to take. Like we hired people with no recruitment experience, sometimes right out of college, and to like see somebody go from struggling and miserable to doing really well and giving them a career path. And we did a lot of work of like taking people out of corporate settings where they were just only like a ghost or a shell of themselves, and like helping them actually be themselves at work and like embrace that and grow as human beings, not just professionals. Like that was so meaningful. I'm like, that's what I'm going to make this about. It's kind of weird because it has nothing to do with their work, but like I am going to find fulfillment by creating an incredible career opportunity and helping my team grow as human beings. And so that was like my first crisis. And then that like kept me happy for a bit. And you seem like you have a question, so I'm gonna like pause.
No, it's just it's so
dive into that before I go into the second part.
Yeah, no, it's so, I hate using the word interesting. It's not interesting. Relatable, I think, is probably the better word. Yeah. So many of us, I'm sure, especially if you live in this world that's very B2B oriented, will have those moments at some point after you've been in a role for a while or something else where you're just like, why am I stressed about this? Does it matter if I get this email out tomorrow? Or like, is life going to go on? Like, look at my family, look at my health, look at this or that, like that I actually want to pursue. Like, is this problem like really that big of an issue? Do you zoom out for a second and look at the universe? Not to get all woo woo or anything on it, but yeah, I think you saying this, I think that validates. I'm sure a lot of people have those moments where just like, am I doing the thing that makes me happy, or should I start to reflect on it some more and get into that? So no, more just applauding you for sharing that here, and also saying like, I think a lot of people who listen to this can relate to that bit, even though I know a lot of us feel like, oh, I feel crazy for, am I having a midlife crisis? Do I need to go buy a Ford convertible Mustang because, and like be the stereotypical midlife crisis? It's like, well, it's not a crisis in that regard. I think it's just figuring out like, sometimes that's just your internal compass saying, hey, our values aren't fully aligned to what we're doing right now that we may want to be doing. Like, let's start to calibrate or recalibrate and figure out what is that thing that brings me joy, fulfillment as part of this direction I'm going in.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like I kind of beat myself up for asking those questions too, because I was like, dude, you're making really good money. You're now at the point where you're not working a ton, like maybe working 35 hours a week. Like you have a great team. Like, what's
Yeah.
wrong
Why
with
can't you
you?
be grateful,
Like,
Greg?
this is what you said you wanted. This is what other people want to strive for. And like I was grateful for those things and actually like pretty happy at work. I just wasn't fulfilled. And then yeah, and then like realized that that was okay, but I needed to do so. I either just needed to accept that and just say like I'm gonna live. And I know a lot of people who just say, you know what, like I'm not gonna find fulfillment in work. I'll have fulfillment in other places, and like that's okay too. But for whatever reason, I wasn't okay with that, and yeah, that it really led to us shaping an incredible company. And I mean, there were years where we didn't lose a single team member, even when we had 20 employees. I think over a longer stretch, our turnover was maybe 7% for our onshore team, maybe 15% for our offshore team. But we didn't pay super well. Like we paid middle market. It was fair, but not special. But I think we help people, our team, be seen and feel just like people, and being given an opportunity and being cared for. And yeah, they were also able to make good money, and that was really important. But I think it led to us creating something really special.
Yeah, that is so. When I joined Loxo, Matt kept using this word ikigai all the time, and it's basically it's the intersection
Mhm.
of like how well you're paid, the people team you work with, and the mission, what you're selling, and what you speak to there, and with the retention rates is something that I've seen time and again. Is once you do get to a certain level of compensation, the single biggest variable in that equation is the people. It's not necessarily the product or service that you're selling, the mission, the market that you serve, but it's the people that you surround yourself with. And there have been a number of high performers I've talked to that you can go and dangle $50,000, $100,000 more than what they're currently making at a, I won't even say a garbage company, but just a place that's got like an okay culture. Think big corporate. Do you want to go work at Apple? Do you want to go work at Google? And they're just like, I wouldn't trade the team that I'm with, what I'm able to learn as part of being with this group and just everything that comes with it for that extra money. It's not worth it. Or if it's in the space, if they're super passionate about health, the people component is, even though it's one of three circles, the amount of weight that it carries is disproportionate to the others.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. All are important, but each person will have their own
yeah.
balance for
So how'd
that.
you create that there? You said you were focusing on that led to those crazy retention rates and everything. Like, what were you doing within the company to help with that?
So we were deeply committed to employee success. So committing to weekly one-on-ones. When I eventually hired a management team, I was obsessive with helping making sure that their one-on-ones were the best one-on-ones possible and spending it in it. Not just like, are you having a one-on-one, but like I'm gonna sit in and I'm gonna join and I'm gonna coach you and make sure that you're hearing what the real problem is, that you're giving real feedback, you're holding people accountable, but you're also being supportive. So it was really, really, really investing in just the support that somebody needed to be successful, but also a lot of the human side. And we almost had this like, it was like an informal part of our onboarding process of like decorporatizing people. And I would often, even when I was no longer managing team members, like I would sit down and be like, okay, we're going to go write a marketing email to a candidate or a client. Um, let's go do this. And I'd be like, no, this is just jargon. Like I want to hear your voice. And we would keep doing it week after week after week until people had their voice. And like same thing on calls. Like Ray, you're not showing up as you. Like you need to be you in these situations. And like I saw it as our competitive
Mm-hmm.
advantage, because people want to connect with real people, not robots. And so there was a huge amount of energy that went into like be you and be successful because you're being yourself, not despite that. Um, And then the last thing was just being very raw and open with feedback and transparency. So we were fully remote post COVID, and we would get together twice a year, and we would get the whole at least US based team together in a semicircle, and I would get in a chair and sit in the middle, and I would just say, all right, like, tell me what sucks. Tell me what needs to be fixed. Like, now is your time to just rail on our business and our company. And it would usually start off, we want clients to be more responsive. I'm like, what do we need to do better? And it could get pretty brutal at times. And like, maybe it would be direct feedback about me or my leadership style or something that we don't do in the business. Sometimes it could be really practical. Like, hey, I think if we had our own cell phones, it would help me better disconnect from work, right? Like, ideas big and small. But we would do these sessions for about 2 hours twice a year. And then the leadership team and I would put together this huge wall of like, these are all the things we heard from the team. We decide what we felt was important. And then we'd come back with an action plan and just say, like, hey, really realistically, we heard these 10 different things. It's either impractical or just not something that we can do as a business today. We want to table them for down the road. Here are the things we're going to do. And every month or every quarter, we're going to give you an update on how we're doing. And like, we're going to be very out in the open. And if like we're failing to do these things, we'll tell you why, whether it's because it's a business priority or our own failings or not, and how it's going. And we were like so radically transparent and committed to building the best possible company for our team, that people were like, this is amazing. I've never gotten this before.
Yeah, that's rare.
And it made a better company as a result.
That's wildly rare. And yeah, I mean, it's an element of ownership, and any company, it's like walk the walk and people will start to follow that. But if they see you saying one thing and then doing another, of course they're not gonna do that. But when you open it up by enabling them, like, that doesn't sound like you. Go talk like you. Like, baby steps in the beginning, and then, as you said, the larger feedback as time goes on, and then saying like, hey, we hear you. We fully heard you. Like, here's the list. Here's what we're gonna do about it. Very rare you ever see that in a company, that they're willing to do that. And of course they're just like, oh, this is leadership that actually cares about me, about, how we get along. So that's one of those things I think is very easy to say, hard to do in practice. Not that it's impossible to, it's just difficult to have owners be willing to take that on. I mean, it's like, I'm trying to keep the business afloat. Now you're telling me I have to take in this feedback from employees who are working in the business, not on the business, blah blah blah. But I think that also shows, when you look at the long tail of things, retention, what that does for costs on that front. You were talking about how you're able to run so lean, being able to have consistent points of contacts with your clients. That helps to keep those relationships longer, more revenue on that front. So when you do look at the broader scope of things, it's just like, oh, if it's just a matter of, yeah, I'll get you a $70 cell phone per month and pay for that. And that's going to be one of those things that's a big, like, no brainer. Duh, do it. Just tell me what plan you want.
Yeah. 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 And we learned so much and gained so much. We were so much better for it as a business. And yeah, thankfully, like, it also showed up in the way the team invested in the company, and we almost never struggled to hire because everybody loved working here too. And like, those were all just like ancillary benefits.
Yeah. Okay. I know we have a lot more to get through, so I'm gonna start to try to keep it tight. One, how you said, like, you would just sit in on one-on-ones and make them better. That is something I think you probably have unique insight into. And I would say, like, things that are obvious to you are not to other people. I bet if you wrote up something like how to conduct a good one-on-one, because that spans any industry, any job, I could get value from it equally, like how one of your clients could get from it, from one of your candidates. And like, hey, when you go and start in this role, take this to your new manager and say, this is how we should do it. I would kill to read that. And I think that's something, like, that's a unique value add from your skills, your experience. Yeah. Like, I would love to see that. So I'm going to challenge you. I want to see that in the next month or so.
Done. It's on paper.
Perfect. Okay. So one of the things we were talking about before the call is, and this is a topic for, like, many agencies are coming across, is just niching down. Should we do it? Should we not do it? You said you learned a few things along the way when it came to this topic. So I'll keep it broad and let you take the conversation from here with that.
Yeah, so I think two lessons learned, one probably after the fact, and one I think we did a good job addressing. So yeah, in the early days, we thought we were niched. We thought, oh, we're healthcare recruiters that focus in California. And we like searches that are clinical in nature, like somebody is an RN or a physician, whether in staff or leadership. Um, and to an extent, like we were more knowledgeable than just like the average generalist recruiter. And I think like we could build Boolean a little better, we could sell ourselves better because we understood that world. Um, but we were also horribly niched. Like 95% of searches, we were starting from scratch with our candidate pool. Like maybe we would work with a health, like bread and butter, we would do a lot of work with physician groups. They would need a director of case management. And maybe we have two searches going at once, but one's in San Diego and one's in San Francisco, and people won't reload for this job. So like, yeah, like we had zero efficiency. And I think what got to me was when I would go to recruiter events, I would meet these recruiters and I'd ask them what they're doing. And I'm like, we are miles ahead of these people when it comes to technology, when it comes to processes, like the way we sell ourselves, all these things, but they're putting up the same or better numbers. And when I would ask them about their searches, they'd be like, oh, well, I only work in this like 20-mile square radius. And so when I get a search, I already know 5 people. And I'm like, damn, like they are niched. And like just by being niched, like, I don't know, it's pretty arrogant too, but I'm like, we are better in every single way, but just by them being better niche, they're better recruiters from us. And that really caused us to rethink the business. And at that point, we were probably a $2 or $3 million agency with, 10 plus recruiters. And then we started saying, okay, like we got to like work towards this. And then we started pushing our recruiters to pick very tight niches. And then we got like a behavioral health recruiter in the San Francisco Bay Area who works almost exclusively with nonprofits. And like she started crushing it, and she was able to like immediately start to accelerate past other recruiters because she was just able to work the same candidates. She knew all the clients, they knew her. And we're like, okay, we're on to something. Then we started to like replicate that. Um, but it took, I don't know, 7 years before we figured that out.
Yeah, no, that's we like to think things have to be complicated or sophisticated. I would say complicated and sophisticated are not the same, but like there is a simplicity in that niching down that like when you know the entire market, you don't have to have the most complicated tech stack. You don't have to have these like you go on LinkedIn now, you see these wonky workflows that people are like, oh, this is what's going to drive me to 100 million. It's just like no, like I know the 100 candidates who are a fit for this role. I have relationships with them, and the hiring manager is like, I'm the dot connector. That's all you need. You don't need a workflow to accomplish this. So that is, as a recruiter, it's like relationships are everything, right? And just not forgetting that amidst everything else. I think that's, yeah, it's interesting how you came around to that, and I'm sure you blew it out of the park because you were more advanced in the other things that you could layer on top of that. But just that simple
Yeah.
fundamental part of recruitment was one of the things that you're just like, duh.
Yeah. Yeah. And a big part of it was hiring. We hired a VP from Robert Half. And she's like, no, like this is how you do things. And she's like, there's all sorts of problems with Robert Half. The one thing they do well, they pick niches. Um, yeah. Yeah. And it was a huge lesson. Now, interestingly, I think we learned that lesson once. I don't think we really learned it the second time around because we had been very opportunistic with our service offering. And so we'd always stayed in healthcare, mostly in California, and we built these niches within the business of different geographies, different subsections of healthcare. Um, but our offerings ended up becoming pretty broad. We got into the RPO space, which was awesome. We had a $1.5 million business that was really profitable, where we were just the embedded partners, and that was probably a 7 to 10 person team, which was great. We also got into contract staffing, and like these were really opportunistic where a client came to us, they're like, hey, can you do this? And we're like, yes, we can. And they're like, hey, can you do payroll? Yes, we can. Right. But we found ourselves in a place where our business was equally divided between direct hire, RPO, and contract staffing. When you broke it down in our gross margin, it was about 1.3 to 1.6 million for each of those lines. And it was great. We were able to run a really profitable business, but we were getting stuck. And what we started to recognize is that, yeah, these are all recruitment with roughly the same people, but the sales process is totally different. Like to go sell an enterprise solution that's going to be a $500,000 deal or even a couple $100,000 deal to be an embedded partner, completely different sales process. Like we need to be going to conferences, like we need to be doing these long-term pipelining projects, totally different than like what you do to grow a contract staffing business. And so we started to get to a point where it really helped us grow our business to one point, but then we got to a point where we were trying to run three directions at once, which if you're a company, you have the resources to do it, but we didn't really have the capacity to develop very sophisticated intentional strategies for what essentially became three businesses. And it caused us to get stuck right around that $3 to $4 million mark.
Yeah. I think I mean, you see it, SaaS companies struggle with this, recruitment agencies struggle with it, where it's like, as you say, the opportunistic, you want to take, yeah, oh, you want help with that? We can definitely do that. We've got expertise that could do something along these lines. But as time goes on, then you find you have to broaden your message, be like, oh, well, if we want to do more of this, like you start watering down your main value drivers. You stop doing the things that, like you said, you stop going to those events because what's the opportunity? I have to send more emails to get this contract work or anything else. But you also lose on the reputation side is one thing I found. Like when you're truly known for something, like we do direct hire for behavioral nurses in the San Fran area versus this, like, yeah, they do healthcare recruiting, like two very different connotations. Which one are you going to get recommended for? Like all of a sudden you're fighting with the masses again instead of being like, oh yeah, like Greg, this is what they do. Just go talk to him. He's the guy.
Yeah. Yeah, and when I would go and talk to somebody who had built a much larger business in one of those spaces, like when I would go talk to like an RPO expert, I'd be like, oh, they're way better at this. Like every single aspect, like sales, account management, account development, like delivery process. I'm like, they're way better than us. We could probably get to that point if we put all of our energy into that. And then we go talk to like somebody who'd built $100 million staffing business, and same thing. I'm like, oh, they're way better at sales and account development and delivery. And I'm like, we could probably go do that if that's all we focused on. Um, but then we, at this point, we were like, do we want to burn the ships on two of these business models and go all in on one or not? And yeah, it really ended up. It was great to get us to one level of profitability, but not. It really did cause us to get stuck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's focus and the number of reps that you put in. Like it's just a fact. Like yeah, if you had all the time, if you're focused on that one thing and you did as many reps, like you're going to be successful. But when you try to spread it across everything, we know how that goes. So things wound down there. You walked away. Now you're back. You're back in the recruitment world.
Yeah.
What drew you back in?
Well, the very brief part of walking away was me realizing took 10 years to get there, but my business partner, the primary owner, and I had very different values when it came to people. And I think are people or people resources? And we ended up on different ends of that. And I realized I could stay in the business for however long it would take to get a big exit, which would have been a while, at least a few years, and either just change my values or swallow them, or not. But it wasn't going to work. We weren't going to be compatible without one of us changing. And so I decided to walk away, and left it all on the table. And if the business sells someday, yeah, I'll get a little payout, nothing huge, but yeah, walked away from what would have been a big opportunity. I was burnt out as all get out, and started just falling into some consulting. We had built a company where 45% of our team, 18 of our 38 team members were offshore, all over the world. And I started to have peers approaching me and saying like, hey, Greg, I tried hiring this RPO in India, and, I told them I need you to find me attorneys, and they're finding me paralegals. Like, what's going on here? Like, what's going wrong? And so I started falling into some consulting opportunities to help agencies figure out how to scale using offshore teams. And after a while, what became very clear to me is that agencies really needed two things to do this well. One, they needed a bit of guidance on just how to get set up, like what role makes sense to offshore. Not all of them do. Where in the world should you hire? Like what should you pay somebody to attract like a really high performer who's going to be reliable? And then they needed really good people, because just like in the US, your average person is average. Half the people are below average, and to perform well, you need to go out and get a top performer. And most agencies weren't focused on that. Most of the offshore agencies work on a staffing agency model where they pay the people half of what they collect. You're not going to get a high performer with that. It's going to be through direct employment. And so what I eventually fell into, because it's just what agencies needed was essentially running a direct hire model for offshore recruiters.
It's so simple the way that you put it there, but no one wants to think through it that lens because they're viewing it as, I'm assuming, people are a resource, that mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, how can I make the most out of it? And what most agencies do is they say, well, I want to get monthly recurring revenue. It's a stable business model and it's how I can get a great exit. So I'm going to go to these companies and I'm going to have them pay way more than they need to per month. And I'm going to go get people who are willing to accept the lowest possible pay to stick around. And as the agency, I come out ahead, but both the client and the actual employee get the short end of the stick. And like that just frustrates the hell out of me. And that's something I really want to go about changing and building a business that changes a few people's minds and helps some agencies and some employees succeed along the way.
I love that. So what would you say, like, what's the big question that you ask in discovery now to help an agency come to this realization?
What's the biggest bottleneck in your business? And that usually leads to, is hiring what you need right now, or is it something else? And if so, what role should you hire? And then inevitably, is that role going to work well in another country or not?
Yeah. Okay. How do you not deal with is a bad word there. When most people think of offshoring, they think of someone who lives the other side of the globe, whether it's South America, South Africa, Asia. If they don't work when I'm working, how are we going to work together? Like that kind of question comes up. Like if I'm not there to manage them or to do this, like it's a different type of communication that's required to successfully manage these individuals. So is that something also that you're looking for or guiding these organizations on in order to make this successful?
Yeah, and it shouldn't actually be a problem. And there's a few countries that are going to be hubs. I mean, Latin America, you have essentially the same time zones, but your other international hubs for recruitment, being South Africa, India, Pakistan, and the Philippines, have such a strong work base where arguably most of the talented people are accustomed to working US hours.
Okay. Well, I think that's going to change some minds here, which is a good thing. So,
Yeah.
All right, we are running on an hour, just shy of it already somehow. This has been fun. What did we miss? Any last second thoughts or things that you think we should chat through before we wrap?
I think maybe the biggest misconception that I get about offshore is, oh, can they actually get on the phone with somebody? And I think so often, unfortunately, we have the perception that of like the customer service agent for the airline that drives us crazy in India, where they're not understanding what we're saying. And like that is so far from the truth. Like I've met people who can MBAs who are recruiters and earning $2,000 a month who can run circles around me and regularly speak to CEOs. And like there's incredibly talented people out there. You just have to know how to find them.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same. Like you said, there's 50% is below average, 50% is above average. A lot of the organizations chase the lowest cost possible, so that's often below average individuals that they bring on. So that's the experience. But like you said, it's all recruitment. At the end of the day, go find the right talent, the right people. They're there. If you seek them out, they are very, very, very capable.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, this was fun. I think this is going to be pretty enlightening for a lot of people. We hit on some recruitment stuff. We hit on some life stuff. We hit on some business stuff. It was a good mix of everything. So, you mentioned you share on LinkedIn. Like, where can people find you if they just want to learn a little bit more about what you're doing or what you're helping with?
Yeah, LinkedIn is a great place. So just look up Greg Fischer or my company, Well-Oiled Machine. I post at least once a day on anything related to a lot of what I'm seeing working well or not working well in recruitment, along with how to go set up offshore yourself if you want to do it.
Love it. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on. We might have to do a part 2 sometime, or when you get that one-on-one memo, how to conduct a proper one-on-one. We'll do a follow-up then.
Oh, there's like 3 good posts out there that add some value for some folks.
Love it. All right, man. Well, appreciate you coming on. Thanks again.
You got it. All right.